Very much. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have Jim Merchant coming on to Finding My North, and we're going to have a conversation about mental health and all things photography. Before we start this session, first of all, in the spirit of reconciliation, the Finding North Network acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to the land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people today. This morning I am connecting online with you all on the lands of Turrbal and Yagara people. I'd like to also acknowledge the values and expertise of families, people and carers with lived and living experiences of mental health conditions, and thank you so much all for being here today. Now, standard virtual event etiquette, please stay on mute for our recording of this session. If you have any questions, we will be having a 30-minute discussion after my chat with Jim that will be off the recording. If you need help, please select chat, and Donna and Crystal will be online to assist with you all. Just a content warning that we may have topics that might be a little bit uncomfortable for you. So if at any point you need to take a break, please feel free to look after yourselves. And if you need assistance, please contact Donna and Crystal online as well. As always, these discussions and conversations can be amazingly engaging, but you can also feel discomfort at times. So please make sure that you are looking after yourself. And please, be respectful and be present and speak with the intention to learn and understanding and also acceptance as well. Now for this wonderful conversations that I have. Welcome, Jim, and thank you so much for coming and sharing with me today and taking the time this morning with us. So I guess, I've known you and have conversations with you for probably, I think we've had about 3 or 4 conversations together, Jim, haven't we?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
And we never have any problems filling in the time.
Absolutely not. And I guess I want to start off with saying thank you today, but also my first questions for you today, can you please tell us about your story and, how you are in here in today?
Yeah, I've had, I suppose, a fairly extensive insight into the different aspects of mental health during my career, but also realizing that I myself was affected by mental health issues, which I don't think everybody can understand. They sort of get this feeling where I seem to be different to other people, or I seem to be more emotional than some others, or there's certain things that I find really confronting. And I tend to be a person that has too much input. I get a lot of things happening around me and I find it hard to concentrate because I'm taking in the environment, I'm taking in what's being said to me. I can hear all side conversations happening at the same time. And I find that walking into somewhere like a large shopping centre is just sensory overload.
I experience the same thing, Jim. If I need to go into shopping centers on a day that I'm not feeling too well, I actually need noise cancelling headphones for me to actually work well. And how is that for you now?
I try and avoid places where there is crowds. I also recognise that going to something like Sydney has the Vivid when it's allowed to be on. And if I go in there on a night where it's really busy and I'm in a crowd, I get to the point where I want to fight my way to the edge and get out of the crush. I also experienced the same when I was in a mosh pit. because being a follower of progressive metal, you find yourself in a mosh pit with a lot of metalheads, and
it sounds like that it can be quite, like, to be in these environments can be quite anxious, and also I think my question is, I know that you love Star Wars, and so you've done awesome shoots for Comic-Con and things like that. So how do you manage to go to these things while also having that angst inside you, and how do you manage that so well?
I think you've got the balance of the excitement of something you really enjoy, but also with that, if you go to Comic-Con or any of these, it's not necessarily that much of a crush, and I can go around the edges so that I don't have to go through where all the stores and things are if it's really busy. So I can sort of pick my times. I normally go on both days because I enjoy it that much. And the last time I was dressed as the Mandalorian, which is on my Instagram page if anybody wants to check it out, but they'll have to scroll down a bit now because that's I think the last time I went was in 2020, just before we had the major lockdown here.
What's your Instagram?
Jim Merchant, all one word.
Thank you. Awesome. Mandalorian, huh? It's very interesting.
Yeah, the funny thing was, on the day, my son, we actually printed in 3D the whole costume and painted it in 2 weeks. And as a surprise, he printed me Grogu. And it was the scene where he's got the frog in his mouth. So he's got the frog's legs hanging out of his mouth. So that gave me a great in for the day that I would show him to people, but I would apologize because when they were building for the Olympics on the site of it was actually Supernova, they found that there was an area with protected bell frogs. So, and the frog's legs that were hanging out of his mouth look a lot like bell frogs. So even when I got up on stage, yes, I know, a bit of an extrovert when it comes to stages, not good one-on-one. Anyway, I went up on stage. I couldn't see because I had the Mandalorian helmet on and the lights were hitting my eyes. But anyway, I held up Grogu and showed the audience, and they're all clapping. And then I turned him around and I've gone, realizing he's got frog's legs hanging out of his mouth. So I put him down and I've chastised him, and it made for great theatre.
Oh my goodness, that must have been really, really fun.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear. So Jim, tell, you obviously you have a love for Star Wars and photography as well, as we mentioned. Tell us how you have used photography in relation to your mental health, because I know that you've been in competitions and you've, done wonderful things with photography. And with our previous conversations, you've told me that photography can help you focus. I'd really love to hear more about that.
And I actually heard another instance of this, which basically ratified what I've been talking about, just from somebody yesterday. And I didn't prompt them at all about what had happened. I just asked them sort of a few questions, and the feedback they gave me sort of proves that this actually works. What I found was I was working with a couple of guys in their 30s who were on the spectrum. One has autism, bipolar, PTSD. So he didn't go out of his unit much. So I said to him, so if we were to go out somewhere, what do you relate to more? The ocean and water? Or do you find walking through the bush more calming for you? Because he had the same thing. Everything was input to him. So he actually had to wear noise cancelling headphones just to ride on public transport. The problem, as you know, with noise cancelling headphones is if you're walking a street and you're going to cross a road, you can't hear traffic or anything either. So you actually got to turn that noise cancelling part off. Anyway, I digress. So he was interested in photography, and that's part of how we got to work together in the first place. But I used to take him out. So a bonus was he liked an outing. We'd go somewhere where there was water. And I actually worked out you could combine the two, because if you could find a bushwalk where there was a waterfall at the end of it, it was a double win.
How did you get into photography, Jim?
How did I get into photography? Oh, at the age of 18, I bought my first digital photography camera. It was a film camera.
Was it like a Kodak, like the hard thick
No,
one?
no, it was a full-blown DSLR. It was the brand was Praktica, and it had a metal leaf shutter, which probably doesn't mean a lot, but if you put it on your hand and you put the timer on, when it actually took the photo, it was jump off your hand and land back down again.
How many years ago was that?
1978.
Wow, and technology was that awesome back then already?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Praktica, I think, was a German brand of camera, which I dare say they're still around, but they never made it into the digital age.
Ah, so did you buy that camera, or did someone gift that to you? And
I put it on lay-by, and I bought it from a Sol Patterson's chemist, because chemists used to sell cameras back then.
Wow. What put that on? Why did you decide to buy a camera?
I was working with a guy, and he was a wedding photographer, and an awesome person that I later found out had a drinking problem, because I ended up working with him as his apprentice doing weddings. And he used to have a bottle of scotch stashed in a plant. And basically he grabbed me, we'd go over, he'd pull out 2 little glasses, put a shot in first. He said, "Get this down your son," and we're back into it. So he would have had about 6 of those during the night. I probably would have had about 1 or 2, but at 18, that was plenty. And to tell you the truth, I hate wedding photography. I've shot 250 weddings, and that's not something I would go back to, because to me, it lacks creativity. It's a case of, there's the wedding, drunken uncles in, drunken uncles out, you know, that type of thing. There's a skit about that one that's quite funny.
Okay, wow.
But I won't go into detail. Anyway.
How do we get from photography to wedding to mental health?
Well, because a lot of people think if they're wedding photographers, they've made it. But I actually found that quite stressful, and it ruined my love of photography. And the event that actually caused that was at the end of the night, where the bride throws the bouquet. She normally turns around, throws it over her shoulder, and whoever catches it is next in line then to be married, theoretically. Anyway, I was standing there ready to get the photo of it. So I'm standing back with the group that would catch it. It was a low ceiling, so when the bride threw it, it hit the ceiling and landed at my feet. This was it was the garter, I'm sorry, not the bouquet. I just instinctively bent down, picked it up to give it back to her to have another go. And the people that were running the reception just absolutely went off and kicked me out the place.
Wow.
And to me, I hadn't done anything wrong. I thought, well, you know, it's not a singular moment in time. It's not like getting wrong the I do. It's they can throw it again. Nobody's got this on video. So I thought that I was really hard done by, and yeah, I didn't really want to go back to doing wedding photography again. So I put the camera down, and I put the camera down for about 8 years. And then my daughter was getting married, and by that time digital cameras had come in. So I thought, well, I better get a digital camera, just because I don't trust anybody else to do it. I'll take my daughter's wedding. And yeah, it did a surprisingly good job of it. And I mean, in those days, the memory cards you could get for your cameras, they went right up to 512K.
Wow.
Just like half a megabyte.
That's not a lot.
No, I've got cards now that are 128 megabyte. But and the speed that they can capture at now, I can shoot on one of my cameras at 20 frames per second, and it will quite happily capture that as long as I don't keep my finger down too long and then overrun the buffer. So yeah, they're quite amazing these days. But as I tell everyone, that it's, people say, oh, you take amazing photos, you must have a really good camera. Well, that's akin to walking into a restaurant and saying to the chef, you make an amazing meal, you must have a really good stove. People ask me about photography, and I tell them it's not the wand, it's the wizard. So you always sort of keep that in mind. But the great thing about photography and mental health is, if you've got the viewfinder up to your eye, you're looking outwardly. You're looking at something that interests you. You're intent on capturing whatever it is about this image that you're about to press the shutter on that interests you, and hoping that if you show it to somebody else, you can convey why you press that shutter. And I could go on about why a lot of people go wrong with that, because they see something, they think, oh, this is amazing, I've got to get a photo of it. Where's my phone? And they go and take the photo, and then they get home and they look at it and think, that really doesn't show that dolphin that was 100 feet away and is now just a spot in the ocean.
I loved your award-winning photo. Can you tell us more a little bit about that picture? I've said to you when I first saw it, it was like, that's what it really means when a picture says 1,000 words, or whatever that saying is. When you created that photography, what was in your head, and what were your vision?
Sometimes I'm most creative on my worst days, and on that particular day I was trying to concentrate on the photography that I was doing, but at any point in time I've always got at least a song in my head, so I'll just come out and start singing something, and somebody will say, why are you singing that? And I'll stop and I'll think, I have no idea. It might be the theme for the aeroplane jelly. But yeah, it's just what I was thinking at the time, and I'll hum it or sing it or whatever. Plus I'm thinking about some of the people in my life and what they're going through, and maybe about my mother and what's the weather doing, and everything is input.
What was the song on that day? Do you remember?
No, because I also suffer from short-term memory loss. So asking me what I was doing, that would have been about 2019 when I took that photo. I remember where it was, I remember who I photographed, and my thoughts behind it. But what I was thinking on that day, I would have to honestly say, I don't know, but probably too much.
So what was the thought behind that photo?
Okay, it was right at the time when masks were having to be worn. So I actually had a ration gas mask, which I own. It's from World War II. And I couldn't think of a more confronting looking device than this rubber mask. And actually, when you put it on, if you leave the filter on it, you have a really hard time breathing, which is probably good because I've been told since that the filters have got asbestos in them. So I'm not using the filters anymore. Anyway, so if anybody was game enough to wear this for me, they would find that it was like very restrictive, and they'd want to, you'd sort of be weighing up which is worse, the gas or wearing the gas mask. So yeah, fairly torturous devices. And I'm thinking, I want to take the model as they're relating to the mask and thinking about, like, is this our future? Is, you know, are we going to always have to wear these things? And so I actually did a series on COVID-19 in relationship to the mask. I've got another photo in there of the model screaming, holding the mask, and a distorted version of her the other side, the frustration of that. But she was also good at giving me emotions. She was a very good method actor. So I would give her the concept and she would act that out for me. So basically I was conveying what I was feeling to her. She was relating it back and I was photographing it, because you can't take yourself and do that as well. So things like when you've gone out and you've put the happy smiley face on for hours and tried to make out that, you know, life was great when you're dying on the inside, and then you get home and you can find there's nobody around, nobody can hear you, and you can finally scream or curl into a ball on the floor or bed or whatever, and just cried out. And yeah, she was able to show that for me. The winning photo from Out from the Mist was about how hard it is to make a decision when you're extremely stressed and you're trying to make a rational thought, but it's just not happening for you. So it makes it 10 times harder, just to pick a number, to come up with rational thinking. And that's when we tend to make irrational types of decisions. So to portray that, I took 3 photos of her in different positions and did a composite of that to show that she was in 3 minds. Because the usual saying is, oh, I'm in 2 minds about that. No, when you've got mental health to deal with as well, it's more than 2 minds.
It is, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important picture, because it really explains a lot of how someone feels. And sometimes you're like, you know, there's not enough words to explain, but a picture and you're showing this is how I actually physically feel, and inside my brain is exactly the same. It's such a powerful thing to do. We also talked about your granddaughter and the pictures that you took because of what she was experiencing.
Okay. It's unfinished and I haven't really released many photos of this, but there's actually another site on Instagram called The Umbrella Project, which goes into a little bit about where I'm heading with this. But basically, I photographed a series of people and my granddaughter was one of them, in situations where it may either immediately impact on your mental health, or it may be something that impacts on your mental health later on in life, but never leaves you, such as bullying. And at the time, my granddaughter, who was 7, had been bullied at primary school. And there wasn't a real lot that was being done about it, because it's a matter now in the schools of, oh, well, you know, we'll get the two of you together and you can sort of talk about it and you can become friends. And that doesn't always happen in life. You don't end up friends with everybody. Sometimes it's a chemistry thing. I mean, I believe the same chemistry that works for love also works for not liking somebody. And it's one of those sort of unexplainable things. Sometimes it's because one child is more popular and the other is not a popular child, and they act out because of that, and they take their anger out on the other one or try and belittle them, so that, you know, it's that sort of tall poppy syndrome that we suffer from in Australia, where if anybody gets too above their state in life, we try and drag them down instead of saying, you know, good on you for achievements. So to convey that, I took a photo of my granddaughter, and she's sort of got her head bowed slightly, and she's got the umbrella closed, but she's sort of holding the top of the umbrella. I was going to do this series all in black and white because I just wanted to focus on what was happening, but I now realize that it's probably going to be more powerful in color, because we see in color. This is going to sound weird, but I can see in color and I can see in black and white.
Is that something that is well known with people who are into photography?
No. But if you're going to do something like street photography, where it's going to be contrast, so light and shade, okay, you're half right. When you do photography, a lot of the time you can look at something and you think, okay, this is primarily 2 colors. It might be green grass, blue sky, and sort of not much else happening. But there's a point of interest, and you think, well, would this look better as a color or a black and white? If it's predominantly 2 colors, try it as black and white, because you've got the contrast there, but the color isn't adding anything. So you can always take the color away. Awesome. And then that just focuses on what it is that you're taking. But it's got to add to the narrative, because every photograph is a story on its own. If you have to tell somebody what you called the photograph or why you took it, it's actually not doing its job, because a picture tells its own story.
What would you, what advice would you give to anyone that is interested in photography, especially in relation to mental health, or as a tool or activity to help them when they're having difficult or challenging times?
For anybody with mental health, the last thing I want to do is apply more pressure to you by saying, I want you to go out there and I want you to practice the rule of thirds, and, you know, you've got to shoot at this shutter speed, you've got to shoot at this aperture, watch your depth of field and all this type of thing. That's for people who want to get very seriously into photography, and I'm quite happy to help anybody there. But if you want to use it as a tool to help you focus, you know, be in the moment and direct that feelings away from your body, but into something that's creative. Because the beautiful thing about digital cameras these days, it's instant gratifications. You don't have to finish the roll of film, send it off, maybe wait up to a week to 2 weeks until the photos come back. You see it instantly. You know if you've taken a great photo. And the beautiful thing about photography is the main person that you need to please is you. If you've pleased you, you've met your objective. If anybody else likes your photos, it's a bonus.
That's very powerful, Jim. I find that for me, sometimes I'm in the midst of challenging times and things. And for someone who is, I would say, a recovering perfectionist and people pleaser, my focus is always to please others. So I think when you said that the main objective is really to please myself, that is power within it itself and giving me back, power as well. It's because it's not about whether or not you like it, Jim. It's whether or not I like it. And if you like it, that's a bonus. And I think that's really powerful. So thank you so much for that. Do you have any last advice you would like to give anyone who's interested in photography before we stop the recording and have a fervent discussion?
Anybody that's interested in photography, I would like them to do two things. If they're going somewhere to take a photograph of it, put your camera down, make sure you've got a pad and paper with you, sit for 20 minutes and just journal what you're seeing and what you like about it. After 20 minutes, you can pick up the camera and take the photo of what it was that appealed to you. Say, I'm talking about a landscape or something like that here, something that doesn't move. You can't do this with wildlife. They've gone. But something like a waterfall, even a tree. Some people see a tree and they think, this tree is absolutely amazing. Okay. What are you seeing about it that's different to any other tree? Is it the color, the shape, the struggle that it's had to grow in a rocky environment? Write it all down. And then when you take the photo, make sure that you're capturing the essence of that. Too many people, when they take photos, is they walk up to something and they say, got to get a photo of this, take the photo, keep walking.
That's me.
But that is reportage, they call that, which is basically just reporting, I was there, I saw this, I took a photo of it, I moved on. But then you look back at it and you think, that wasn't really the part that I found interesting, or I didn't capture the part that was interesting to me.
Would you say that sitting there for that 20 minutes and writing that down allows you to be present and actually be in that moment?
Very focused, yes. The actual, my mentor that taught me this method of improving how you capture landscapes and that type of thing, it was even tougher for me, because he took me to a position and he said, I want you to sit on this log. Yeah, okay, no problem. You can't touch the camera. Okay, what are we here for then? Okay, here's your pad and paper. You're going to write for 20 minutes what you're seeing from where you are. After 20 minutes, you can't get up off the log, but you can get the camera and take a photo from the position that you're currently sitting in without moving around. And yeah, I took a quite reasonable photo, and it wasn't until after I'd finished the journaling that I decided that, okay, I know what I want to capture. What's the best way of capturing this? Do I use a really slow shutter speed to let the water become smooth because I don't want it to be too intrusive on what I'm actually capturing, which is this dead log that was, or tree that was sort of going out into the water. So the water was the supporting act, but the tree was the subject. So always carry the subject.
All right.
The last thing I'll say is, if you're taking somebody's photo, don't stand them out in the sun. They're going to squint and you're going to have harsh shadows on their face. find a little bit of shade and take the photo in there. Don't take people straight on because they look like a sheet of cardboard. So always turn a shoulder or something like that. Yeah. They've got to be looking at you if you're taking their portrait, and always make sure the eyes are sharp. If you've got the eyes sharp, you've got the photo. If the eyes aren't sharp, forget it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jim, today for this conversation about photography. I just wanted to say, if anyone's interested in Jim's photography, especially The Mandalorian, his Instagram is Jim Merchant on IG. And then the project that it's currently on hold but is in progress as well is Umbrella Project. Thank you so much.
The Umbrella Project.
The Umbrella Project. Awesome.